She thought she owned my pool. Until one question destroyed her. It started with a splash. The kind that instantly makes your stomach drop. I had just stepped into my backyard. Coffee still warm in my hand, expecting the usual quiet morning. But instead, I froze. There, right in the middle of my pool, was Karen, floating on one of my loungers, wearing oversized sunglasses, sipping from a glass like she had been there for hours. For a second, I genuinely thought I had walked into the wrong house. Then she looked at me and smiled. Not embarrassed, not surprised, just calm, comfortable, like I was the one intruding. "Morning," she said casually, lifting her drink a little, like we were neighbors sharing a resort. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. "What are you doing in my pool?" She didn't even sit up, just adjusted her sunglasses and replied, "Your pool? Oh no. This is part of the HOA community amenities." I actually laughed at first. I thought it had to be a joke, a bad one, but she didn't laugh back. Instead, she took another sip and added, "You should really read your agreement. This area is classified under shared recreational zoning." That's when the silence hit. No punchline, no apology, no getting out, just entitlement, floating right in front of me. I felt that slow burn of anger start to rise. The kind that creeps up your spine when something is so absurd it almost feels unreal. "This is private property," I said, firmer this time. "You need to leave. Now." She finally sat up. But not to leave. To look at me like I was the problem. "You were being very aggressive," she said, shaking her head slightly. "I am well within my rights to be here." Within her rights. In my backyard. In my pool. That's when I noticed something that made it even worse. The gate latch. It was slightly bent, like someone had forced it open. She hadn't just wandered in. She planned this. And as I stood there, trying to decide whether to call the police or drag her out myself, she leaned back again, completely unbothered, and said one sentence that changed everything. "Don't worry. More people will be coming later." That's when I realized this wasn't just trespassing. This was the beginning of something much bigger. The next morning, I thought it couldn't possibly get worse. I was wrong. I stepped outside again, hoping yesterday had just been some bizarre one-time stunt. But before I even reached the pool, I heard voices, laughter, splashing. My grip tightened on the door handle. When I turned the corner, my stomach dropped. 2 kids were jumping into the pool like it was a public water park. And a couple I had never seen before were sitting on my chairs, casually eating snacks. Towels were draped over my fence. Someone had even dragged out my umbrella and set up like they were staying all day. And Karen, of course she was there, standing near the edge, talking like a host welcoming guests into a resort she owned. "Oh good. You were here," she said when she noticed me, as if I had just arrived late to my own event. "We didn't think you'd mind." It asked for the community. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I just stared, trying to process how this had escalated overnight from one trespasser to a full-blown takeover. "This is private property," I finally said, louder this time. "All of you need to leave. Now." The couple exchanged awkward looks, but the kids kept playing. And Karen, she didn't budge. Instead, she pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and held it up toward me. "I actually spoke to the HOA this morning," she said confidently. "They were aware of the situation." Aware? My heart started pounding. Before I could respond, she added, "In fact, you might want to check your email." That one line hit harder than anything else. I turned and went inside, trying to stay calm, telling myself there was no way this was real. But as soon as I opened my inbox, there it was. An official-looking message from the HOA. Subject line: Community Access Clarification Notice. My eyes scanned the words faster and faster with each line. It claimed that due to shared neighborhood benefit considerations, certain outdoor features, including pools, could be subject to community usage allowances. It didn't even sound legally solid, but it sounded official enough to cause problems. I walked back outside, email still open on my phone, anger now mixing with something else. Unease. Karen saw my expression and smiled like she had just won. "See, she said, all perfectly legitimate. And as more people started trickling in through my gate, some carrying drinks, others already in swimwear, it hit me. This wasn't confusion. This was organized. And somehow, Karen had convinced everyone that my backyard belonged to them. By the third day, it stopped feeling like my home and started feeling like I was the one trespassing. I woke up to noise again. Louder this time. Music. Voices. The unmistakable echo of people treating my backyard like a weekend getaway. My heart was already racing before I even looked outside. When I did, it was worse than I imagined. More people. More chairs. Coolers. Someone had set up a portable speaker. Kids were running across my lawn, leaving wet footprints everywhere. And a group of adults were casually gathered near the deep end like they'd done this 100 times before. And right in the center of it all, Karen, laughing, hosting, acting like she owned every inch of my property. That's when something in me snapped. I marched outside, not caring who was watching. This ends today, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. All of you need to leave. Right now. The music lowered. Conversations paused. A few people looked uncomfortable. But Karen, she turned slowly, completely calm, and gave me that same smug smile. You really should learn how to share, she said, almost pitying. This kind of attitude is exactly why the HOA had to step in. I felt my fists clench. You trespassing. Every single one of you. If you don't leave, I am calling the police. That's when the mood shifted. Not fear, not panic, but irritation. Like I was ruining their day. Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound controlled, but loud enough for others to hear. Go ahead, she said. But just so you know, I've already spoken to the board. They fully support community access here. I stared at her, trying to understand how she could say it so confidently. Then she added the line that made everything worse. In fact, she said, gesturing around, we're planning a larger event this weekend. A proper community pool party. You might want to stay inside if this bothers you. A larger event. In my backyard. That's when I realized this wasn't just about today anymore. This was about control. If I let this continue, even for another day, it would become normal. And once it became normal, it would be almost impossible to undo. I went back inside, not because I was giving up, but because I needed to think fast. Because arguing clearly wasn't working. Reasoning wasn't working. And Karen wasn't bluffing. She believed she had power, which meant the only way to stop her wasn't to fight her directly. It was to let her go too far. By the time the weekend arrived, Karen thought she had already won. That was her biggest mistake. I woke up early that morning, long before anyone else showed up, standing by the window and watching my backyard like it was no longer mine. But this time, I wasn't angry. I was ready. Because while Karen had been busy planning her community pool party, I had been setting something up too. Something she would never see coming. Right on schedule. People started arriving. One by one at first. Then in groups. Coolers. Towels. Folding chairs. Even decorations. Someone hung streamers along my fence like it was a public venue. The music started. Louder than ever. And within an hour, my backyard was packed. And Karen, she was in her element. Walking around. Greeting people. Laughing. Pointing things out like she owned everything. At one point, I even heard her say, we should do this every month. Every month. I almost smiled. Because this was exactly what I needed. From inside the house, I watched the cameras. Every angle covered. Every face. Every moment of her acting like the organizer. The authority. The one in charge. No denial. No excuses. Then I stepped outside. Not to argue. Not to shout. Just to place a small sign near the entrance gate. Private property. Owner not responsible for injuries or unauthorized use. A few people noticed. Some shrugged. Others ignored it. Karen saw it too. She frowned for a second. Clearly annoyed. But quickly brushed it off. Yes, just being dramatic. She told someone nearby. It doesn't change anything. That was my cue. I went back inside, picked up my phone, and made one call. Not to the HOA, not to the police, to the city. Because if Karen wanted to turn my private pool into a public facility, then it had to follow public rules, and she hadn't followed a single one. About 30 minutes later, right when the party was at its peak, music blasting, people swimming, drinks everywhere, the gate opened again. But this time, it wasn't more guests. It was inspectors. 2 of them, clipboards in hand, serious expressions. The music slowly died. Conversations faded. People started looking around, confused. Karen walked up to them, trying to stay confident. "Can I help you?" One of the inspectors glanced around the crowded pool, then back at her. "We received a report of an unlicensed public gathering operating without proper permits." The silence that followed was different. Heavy. Karen laughed nervously. "Oh, this isn't public. It's just a small community event." The inspector raised an eyebrow. "On private property, with over 20 attendees. No safety compliance. No liability coverage." Karen's smile started to fade. And then they asked the one question she couldn't answer. "Are you the owner of this property?" For the first time since this started, Karen didn't have control anymore. The moment Karen couldn't answer that question, everything fell apart. For a second, she just stood there, frozen, her mouth slightly open like she was searching for anything to say. The confidence, the authority, the fake ownership, it all vanished right in front of everyone. All eyes were on her. Well, we were part of the HOA," she finally said, her voice no longer steady. "This is a shared." The inspector cut her off. "That wasn't the question. Are you the legal owner of this property?" Silence. Not just from Karen, but from the entire backyard. The music had already stopped. People were stepping out of the pool, whispering, gathering their things. The energy had completely shifted. That's when I stepped forward. "Calm, quiet, certain. I am," I said. The inspectors nodded and turned their attention back to Karen. And just like that, the entire narrative she had built collapsed. No more community access. No more authority. Just a trespasser who had gone too far in front of a crowd of witnesses. What followed was quick and brutal. The inspectors started listing violations: unpermitted public gathering, unauthorized use of private residential property, safety and liability breaches. Each word hit harder than the last. Karen tried to interrupt, to explain, to redirect blame toward the HOA, but it didn't matter anymore. The cameras had everything. Her organizing the event, her inviting people, her claiming control. There was no way out. Within minutes, people started leaving. Quietly at first, then all at once. No one wanted to be part of it anymore. Towels disappeared. Chairs were folded. Coolers packed. The same people who walked in like it was a party walked out like they were escaping a mistake. Karen didn't move. She just stood there, watching everything unravel. A week later, the consequences came in. The HOA sent me a formal letter, an actual one this time. Not vague, not manipulative, clear, direct. My pool was confirmed as private property. No shared access, no exceptions. They also mentioned internal disciplinary action against Karen. I didn't need details. I already knew. Because after that day, things changed. No more random guests. No more noise. No more Karen. In fact, the few times she passed by my house after that, she didn't even look toward the pool. Her pace quickened. Her eyes fixed straight ahead. Like the place didn't exist anymore. And honestly, that was better than any argument, any confrontation, any fight I could have won. Because in the end, I didn't have to prove anything. I just let her prove herself wrong in front of everyone. And that's the thing about people like Karen. You don't stop them by fighting harder. You stop them by giving them just enough space to destroy their own illusion.